In my past life, I was gentle, virtuous, and obedient. I respected my mother-in-law above and raised my children below. For over 50 years, I upheld the Pei household alone all across the capital, who did not praise Madame Pei for her virtue. In my old age, my young grandson knelt on my lap and asked, "Grandmother, I wish you a long and healthy life. What is your wish?" The child's innocent words struck a chord deep in my heart. In the bronze mirror, I saw white hair at my temples. I stretched out my withered hand and stroked his head, falling silent for a long time. On the day I breathed my last, filial sons and worthy grandchildren surrounded me amid the crowd. My husband was nowhere to be seen, that elegant, virtuous grand secretary, whose heart was always with the people. A single tear slid down my cheek. If there is a next life, grandmother wishes never to step into the Pei residence again. When I opened my eyes again and stared at the carved canopy above my bed, I felt both absurd and grateful. The air smelled of the calming incense my mother had specially blended for me. Heaven must have taken pity. It had truly sent me back to my maiden days. In my past life, I was obsessed with Pei Lingen. I ignored my parents' objections and married him without hesitation. From then on, I managed the inner household. All those years, I endured until my harsh mother-in-law passed away. I raised my eldest son to become a Zhuangyuan scholar. I married my adopted daughter into the duke's estate. With great honor, Pei Lingen lived up to expectations and eventually became Grand Secretary. The people praised his achievements, and families scrambled to send their daughters to his residence. I cried by the window day after day, but no one listened to my pain. Dark stains soaked the brocade pillow. I wiped away my tears. Since heaven had given me this chance, I would hold it tight this time. I would never jump into the Pei family's fire too. "You're awake, miss. This servant will help you dress and do your hair." The girl who pushed the door open was Enruo, who had been with me since childhood. I stared blankly at her smooth face, unmarked by the terrible scars she would later bear. Once, only because her looks displeased Pei Lingen's cousin, she had been ordered to have her face slashed and thrown into a brothel. My mother-in-law also hated Enruo for always standing up for me, so she covered for Pei Shuqiu and delayed me. By the time I arrived, I saw my dearest friend, her clothes torn, her neck covered in bruises, trembling all over on a straw mat. I reached for her hand. As if sensing me, she struggled to open her empty eyes, forced a smile, and closed them forever. That image became a nightmare I could not shake for years. I shouted at the Pei household for their cruelty, calling them man-eating devils, but Pei Lingen only replied lightly, "She's just a maid, don't ruin the peace over her." His expression was cold. In his eyes, human lives were as worthless as ants. My parents urged me to divorce him, but I still held fantasies about him. "Poor Enruo, it was your lady who failed you in this life. I will protect you." After a long silence from me, Enruo noticed something was wrong and lifted the bed curtain. "Did you have a nightmare, miss? Your forehead is covered in cold sweat." Looking into her clear almond eyes, my mind snapped back. A ray of morning light filtered through the window and fell on the desk. I shielded my eyes, unaccustomed to the brightness. "Enruo, what day is it today?" My voice was hoarse. Fortunately, Enruo was busy choosing hairpins and did not notice. "It's the 6th day of the month, miss." In the mirror, I saw the delicate face of a young lady, nothing like the white-haired, worn old grandmother Pei of the Pei residence. How wonderful! It was still the spring of the 32nd year of Yuanzhao. My aunt, the Empress, had not yet arranged a marriage for me. My parents were still traveling the world. The 6th day, I remembered. It was on the 6th day in my past life that my aunt, the Empress, summoned me to the palace to arrange my marriage for me. She knew I had loved Pei Lingen since childhood. At my pleading, she had begged the emperor for an imperial decree without my parents' knowledge. My parents flew into a rage. They did not even see me off properly on my wedding day. Only now did I understand their good intentions. I still remembered that my parents had favored Fu Congwen, grandson of the late General Fu, but my heart was entirely with Pei Lingen. Not only did I refuse their arrangement, but after I married into the Pei household, I was stirred up by my mother-in-law and slowly grew distant from my parents, until we cut off all contact. Fate was cruel. Later, my eldest daughter-in-law came from the Fu clan. The Fu family had been military for generations. Full of talent, the young girl met my gaze without the slightest fear. Her resolute expression made me pause. She reminded me of someone from long ago. Among all the noble young ladies, I chose her for my eldest son at a glance. My memory of Fu Congwen only went back to childhood from my daughter-in-law. I heard he was a man of iron and backbone, who spent his whole life fighting on the battlefield, defending the borders, but the accumulated injuries from years of war killed him young. He never married. I still remembered the unconcealed admiration in my daughter-in-law's eyes when she spoke of him. Truly an outstanding man. Too bad I realized it too late. I twisted the jade hairpin in my hand and smiled bitterly. "Unruo, prepare the carriage. I'm going to the palace." Some things had to be faced. My first step would be to stay far away from Pei Lingen, for as the carriage rumbled down Jukyu Avenue, a horse suddenly neighed. I lifted the curtain and looked out. A young man in dark armor galloped past. Reining in his horse with one hand in his arms, he protected a frightened young child. The red tassel on his silver spear swept down a tree of pear blossoms when he turned his head. His brows were sharp as swords. He bore a faint resemblance to my future daughter-in-law from the Fu clan. "That's young General Fu, miss," Unruo whispered by the window, afraid I'd be startled. Perhaps my gaze was too intense. Fu Congwen seemed to sense it. He looked straight at me. Our eyes met. He froze for a moment. The child's parents took him from his arms, blocking my sight. Pear blossom petals drifted through the lifted curtain into the carriage. I picked one and stroked it between my fingers. It had been many years since I last saw him. The imperial decree I had begged for in my past life turned out to be a chain that bound me for a lifetime. After thinking it over, Fu Congwen was actually quite a good choice. Recalling the young man's retreating figure, I made up my mind. 5. The Empress's personal maid was already waiting at the gate to lead me inside the Pepper Room Palace. My aunt sat high on her seat, her phoenix eyes filled with worry. Life in the palace was hard for her too, yet she still thought of me. After arranging my marriage, my parents resented her for giving in to my will. A rift had grown between them ever since. When she saw me, her brows relaxed. She smiled kindly. "Jingyun, come sit beside auntie." I hurried forward and leaned my head on her lap. Dragon's blood incense curled through the air, stinging my eyes. Looking at the new grey hairs at her temples, I could not help but remember my aunt's fate in my past life. After Pei Lingen entered the court, the man he supported was not my cousin, the crown prince. He defected and backed the Prince of Jin, the crown prince's greatest enemy. The Prince of Jin was insidious, treacherous, and utterly evil. The late emperor hated fraternal strife above all else, but he showed no brotherly affection in the end. The two of them worked together to depose my cousin from the crown prince's position, humiliating him in every way. They sent many male servants to his residence, ordering them to humiliate him if he refused. They tortured my aunt. After such vile deeds, my cousin could not bear the shame and killed himself with his sword. My aunt soon died of grief. Following him at that time, I was pregnant. No matter how I begged Pei Lingen, he did nothing. Through my tear-blurred eyes, I even saw pleasure in his gaze. In the heavy rain, I miscarried. I could never bear children again. I only had one son in my whole life. It had been a nearly fully formed baby girl. Pei Lingen had broken my heart completely. After that, I turned away from him entirely. I no longer cared to manage the household and handed over all authority. I began to cultivate myself through Buddhism. Free of my burdens, I felt much lighter. Only after my mother-in-law died did the household authority return to me. 6. Jingyun, you're so quiet today. Are you still worried about your marriage? My aunt dismissed everyone and spoke softly. Don't worry. Before your parents return from the south, auntie will beg the emperor for a decree. I lifted my eyes and cut her off. My jadeite earrings glinted coldly. Auntie, I don't want to marry Pei Lingen anymore. I tried to steady my trembling voice, to sound calm, but my tightly clenched fists betrayed me. My aunt froze, surprise flashing in her eyes. Of course anyone would be shocked. Everyone in the capital knew I had clung to the eldest son of the Pei family like glue. My aunt knew better than anyone how deeply I loved Pei Tingji. To suddenly say I no longer liked him, she would only think I was throwing a tantrum. Sure enough, my aunt asked again, did that boy from the Pei family bully you? I shook my head, stood up, and took her arm. I did not want to talk about him anymore. Auntie, I was young and foolish back then, now I understand. Priceless treasures are easy to find, but a devoted heart is hard to come by. Pei Lingen is simply not my destined match. My aunt set her teacup down heavily on the table. Tea splashed onto my skirt. She looked at me for a long time, as if judging whether I meant it. When she realized I was not being willful, she sighed and gently stroked my hair. All right, I'll listen to you. Auntie is old, I don't understand your young hearts anymore. But a faint, hidden joy flickered in her eyes. She did not chat with me further. She called her maid, Nanny Zhao, help me to rest. My head hurts terribly. She rubbed her temples, looking truly pained. Inside the pepper room inner chamber, Your Majesty, the young lady has left. Empress Song stood by the window, recalling what her brother and sister-in-law had told her before they left for the south. The Pei residence is a den of tigers and wolves. You raised Jingyun since she was little. Do you want to let her sink into the mud? This marriage had always weighed on her conscience. Now that Jingyun had finally seen sense, she only hoped she would choose more wisely in the future. 7. I was about to leave the palace when I ran into the last person I wanted to see. My cousin, the Crown Prince, and Pei Lingen were strolling toward me. The two were deep in conversation, looking utterly pleased with each other. What a close pair they were. To this day, I still could not understand why Pei Lingen had been so cruel to my cousin in the end. Was it really only because he had been forced to marry me? Pei Lingen wore a spotless moonwhite silk robe. He noticed me first, the moment he saw me coming from the Pepper Room Palace. Disgust flashed in his eyes, then vanished. He must have assumed I had come to beg our aunt for an imperial edict to marry him. I almost laughed inwardly. How foolish I had been in my last life. To think that because we were wed young, some affection must exist, that Pei Lingen simply was not good at showing love. My gaze flicked over the jade pendant at his waist. In my past life, he always said it was an heirloom. Only when I heard him drunk did I learn it belonged to the woman he truly loved. Cousin, I curtsied politely. The Crown Prince laughed and teased. Jingyun, are you too excited? Don't you recognize who stands beside your cousin? I did not so much as glance at Pei Lingen. From the corner of my eye, I saw his expression turn stiff, his face flushing unnaturally. Pei Lingen, compared to how you coldly ignored me in my past life, this was nothing. The real show was just beginning. Wait and see. Cousin, I will come to the palace another day to catch up. I have urgent business now, so I shall take my leave. Without waiting for their reaction, I turned and walked away. 8. Brilliant as Pei Lingen was, in my past life he would never have achieved what he did without the support of my Song family. Even the Crown Prince had grown close to him because of me, and in the end, he came to such a terrible end. A sharp glint flashed in my eyes. Pei Lingen, in this life, let us see how far you can go without the Song family backing you. I will make your Pei family pay. By this time, Pei Lingen had already won the Zhuangyuan title. It was too late to interfere with the imperial examination. No matter, I had plenty of ways to keep him trapped in that shabby thatched cottage of the Pei residence forever. In 2 days, noble consort Zhong would hold a flower viewing banquet, ostensibly to admire flowers, but really to choose a consort for the Prince of Jin. I remembered Pei Lingen's cousin would also be invited. Evil company attracted its own kind. I would use this occasion to strike. I dipped a brush in flower juice and drew on a silk handkerchief. In 2 days, I will add some excitement to noble consort Zhong's flower banquet. 9. In the late spring imperial garden, fallen petals littered the blue stone paths. My aunt had claimed illness and stayed away. Better that way. She ought not see such dirty business. A sudden commotion rose from the winding corridor. Amid the clink of hair ornaments, a young lady surrounded by attendants stepped forward. Wearing a 100 butterfly skirt made of green cloud brocade, she smiled sweetly, looking gentle and virtuous. But who could guess that beneath that mask lay a venomous heart? Such a person deserved 1,000 cuts. My nails, hidden in my wide sleeves, dug deep into my palms. I whispered a few words into Enruo's ear. Watching Enruo's retreating back, I stepped forward. I stopped not far from them and casually asked a maid beside me, "Is that the young Miss Pei, the cousin of young Master Pei?" My voice was not loud, but loud enough to be heard. "Cousin." The noble young ladies exchanged odd looks and began whispering. "Miss Pei is a concubine's daughter. How come we never noticed?" I touched my hairpin. A daughter of a concubine's son, concubine born on top of concubine born, was simply not of legitimate birth. Even if she had acted like a legitimate daughter of the Pei family while staying by my side, she could never change her lowly, unrefined origins. Pei Shuqiu noticed me. I saw her grind her teeth in anger, but she held back for the sake of propriety. I felt a flicker of satisfaction, but it was far from enough. I held her gaze for a moment, gave her a provoking look, then turned and left. From the corner of my eye, I saw Pei Shuqiu stamp her foot and follow. I signaled a maid coming toward us with a tray. A scream erupted behind me. "Ah, my dress, you lowly maid, watch where you're going." Panicked, Pei Shuqiu dropped her pretense and spoke her mind. She realized her mistake at once. Her dress soaked, she was furious and embarrassed, but had to swallow her anger and go change first. A maid quickly stepped forward. "Miss Pei, please come with this servant." Pei Shuqiu glared at me fiercely. She clearly had not expected I would humiliate her in public, without caring about Pei Lingen's face. "Go on, dress Miss Pei up nicely." I had already sent an Ruo to lure Pei Lingen to the side chamber, using the name of the woman he cherished most. Given how deeply he cared for her, he would surely take the bait. "In my past life, you shamed my cousin with catamites and eunuchs. In this life, you and your cousin can become a pair of adulterous lovers." Birds scattered from the glazed roof tiles. The good days of the Pei family were about to end. 10. "Greetings to your ladyship, the noble consort." Chorus greetings rang out. I adjusted my dress and sat in the farthest corner, yet she spotted me at once. A fake smile spread across her face. "Jingyun, it's kind of you to grace us with your presence." I lowered my eyes to hide my cold smile, touching the jade bracelet on my wrist, my thoughts elsewhere. "Your ladyship." A disturbance broke out under the corridor. A maid threw herself to her knees before the steps. She tried to whisper into noble consort Zhong's ear, but the woman did not understand. Impatient, she snapped, "Insolent slave, what makes you so flustered? Speak." The maid was nearly in tears, but stammered, "Your ladyship, ahead." She could not finish. Noble consort Zhong shot to her feet. "What is it?" She had meant to send a maid to check, but the servant's face was deathly pale, and the noble consort was short-tempered. She strode forward, the crowd followed. Confused, we reached a chamber. Suddenly, lewd sounds came from inside. "Outrageous. You dare commit such obscenity under my roof. Break the door down." I stood with the others, watching the drama unfold. When the door crashed open, the silk curtains swayed, and the room was in complete disarray. Even I was shocked when I saw the two entangled inside. It was Pei Lingen, and the Prince of Jin. Noble consort Zhong's curses died in her throat. Though stunned, I recovered quickly and stepped forward first. My eyes glistened with tears, which I barely managed to squeeze out. "Pei Lingen, how could you do this to me? I gave you my heart, and yet, you prefer the company of men." I stressed the words "the company of men" heavily. I then turned to the Prince of Jin. "Your Highness, if you had feelings for young Master Pei, you could have said so earlier. Why put me in such embarrassment? Our dynasty is liberal. Such preferences are not without precedent." I had once heard rumors that the Prince of Jin preferred men. I had not believed them at first, but recalling how he had looked at Pei Lingen in my past life, and how they had colluded together, everything made sense now. By then, noble consort Zhong had ordered the news sealed, trying to hush the whispers, but it was useless. Many of the noble ladies present had come only to watch the fun. They did not fear noble consort Zhong. My gaze fell on a nearby burnt-out incense stick. This incense was indistinguishable from ordinary incense upon inspection. I had specially obtained it from Princess Changqing. I had intended it for Pei Lingen and Pei Shuqiu. It was no waste that the Prince of Jin had used it instead. I enjoyed watching Pei Lingen's humiliation. His face was a picture of disgrace. His clothes torn, his expression paler than paper soaked in ink. He looked dazed, as if still recovering from the aphrodisiac incense. A man so obsessed with his dignity would likely kill himself after this day's shame. The Prince of Jin beside him was in no better shape. He came to his senses and fell to his knees before noble consort Zhong, begging for mercy. Mother, I was lost for a moment. Help me, please help me." The scandal was so great that the emperor himself came. He ordered the Prince of Jin arrested. Any hope he had of the throne was gone forever. The only regret was that I had not even needed to lift a finger against Pei Lingen. Noble consort Zhong had 100 ways to make him wish he were dead. Truly a pity. 11 Palace lanterns lit up one by one. I lifted my skirt and walked through the corridor, my embroidered shoes crushing fallen pear blossoms. Pei Shuqiu had disappeared suspiciously, and Ruo was also gone. Only the wind swept through the vast garden. Carrying a faint fragrance, I reached a waterside pavilion and found Enruo. Looking closer, a tall, slender man stood beside her. I called Enruo's name. The man turned around too. It was Fu Congwen. At the sight of me, his peach blossom eyes, usually warm with smiles, were cold and sharp. Enruo left tactfully. I thought Fu Congwen disapproved of my methods, finding me cruel, but he suddenly spoke. Leave such things to me. Why dirty your own hands? This was only our second meeting since my rebirth. I froze and asked simply, "Why are you helping me?" He did not answer, only gazing at the ripples on the pond. I knocked Pei Shuqiu unconscious and left her in the side chamber. "You may deal with her as you wish." I nodded. I would not let her go. I would have her face slashed later and send her to a brothel. The world would only think she had vanished. Pei Lingen's uncle had plenty of daughters. He would never waste men or silver searching for Pei Shuqiu. Looking at the face that reminded me so much of an old friend, my mind drifted back to the thin, shy boy who used to hide behind Fu Congju, stealing glances at me. Now he had become a young general who led troops to war, striking fear into the enemy. Fu Congju was Fu Congwen's elder brother. He had been especially close to us as children. After he was betrayed by a traitor and killed in the Southern Barbarian War, I had never seen Fu Congwen again. With that thought, my gaze toward him cleared. We both wisely avoided mentioning the painful past. "Jingyun, you are not alone," Fu Congwen said suddenly. I turned to look at him. Everything had gone too smoothly. It was as if someone had been helping me all along. He realized his words were abrupt and lowered his eyes to hide his expression. Watching his hurrying back, a thought slowly took shape in my mind. 12 Today, the second young master of the Prime Minister's residence was hosting a horse race. From what I knew, he was on good terms with Fu Congwen and would surely have invited him. To test my suspicion, I asked Changqing for an invitation. As I left the princess's mansion, I unexpectedly ran into Fu Congwen, afraid the carriage would be too noticeable. I got off and followed him for a while until he vanished. Turning a corner, I saw the young man leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. He was no longer solemn as he had been that day. His usual carefree air had returned. This was the Fu Congwen I knew. Fu Congwen held a blade of grass between his fingers, a teasing smile on his lips. "Miss Song, why are you following me?" Perhaps I was thick-skinned, for I felt no embarrassment at being caught. I cleared my throat, stood before him, and lifted my chin to meet his gaze. "What a coincidence, young General Fu," I pretended surprise. "I had no intention of following you. It just seems we're heading the same way. You must be going to the second young master's gathering, too." Fu Congwen raised an eyebrow, amusement glinting in his eyes. I grew uncomfortable under his stare. My lie was truly clumsy. I was not on good terms with Wang Yong, the second son of the Prime Minister's family. He had always disliked Pei Lingen for his arrogance, and by extension, me as well. It was even more absurd to claim I was joining his horse race. Besides, walking all the way to the racing grounds would take forever. As I was thinking of a way out, I saw Enruo had sent the carriage after me, waiting nearby. I relaxed and pulled an invitation card from my sleeve. Luckily, I had come prepared, having obtained it from Changqing. Fu Congwen's gaze moved away from me. "In that case, Miss Song, you may go first. I have some business to attend to." With that, he made a polite gesture for me to proceed. I lifted my handkerchief to hide my awkwardness. I had hurried for nothing. He had simply been on his way to handle matters. 13. Miss Song's riding skills far exceed my expectations. His voice carried the clear chill of spring water over snow, yet he did not slacken his hold on the reins. I turned my head and caught sight of his side face outlined by sunlight. A faint scar ran across his brow bone, lending him a sharp edge. He rode beside me, his black cloak fluttering in the wind. I leaned down to avoid low branches, my heart stirring at his words. In my past life, I had learned to ride horses desperately to please Pei Lingen. Now it had become key to breaking free from him. Compared to you, young General Fu, I am merely showing off my slight skill. I had a growing feeling. The one helping me from behind was Fu Congwen. He smiled without speaking, turning his head to avoid my searching gaze. This man truly had two faces. Looking around, I saw Wang Yong had invited very few people. This was less a competition than a small gathering of close friends. Fu Congwen and I arrived early. I went back to the tent to change halfway. When I stepped out, I saw him galloping freely across the field. Wind and sand lifted the hem of his battle robe. At this moment, he was like an eagle soaring freely beyond the borders. His horse gear glinted like scattered gold under the burning sun. I was about to walk over when a sweet voice called out, "Second brother, this horse racing is such fun." I followed the sound and saw Wang Yong approaching with a figure in pale yellow. I knew that woman all too well. Pei Lingen's study had been covered with her portraits, every smile, every frown. I stared at her for a long time, until she looked up at the rider and spoke again. "Brother Congwen, I'm here." She lifted her skirt and ran toward him. Waving excitedly, Fu Congwen acted as if he had not seen her. He looked away indifferently, his face even turning cold. A flicker of surprise crossed my eyes at their subtle interaction. So Wang Mini loved Fu Congwen. How had I never heard of this in my past life? She had married the crown prince as a secondary consort. The two had never seemed close, and Fu Congwen showed no affection for her whatsoever. If anything, he looked eager to avoid her, afraid he might run away. Wang Mini stepped in front of his horse. "Brother Congwen, you're hiding from me again. How will you escape this time?" Her pale yellow riding dress made her look as bright as a peach blossom. It was rare to see her so lively. In my memory, she had always kept her head down, sitting quietly in corners. After being framed by a concubine in the mansion, she had chosen to live out her days with Buddha to prove her innocence. If everything was because of Fu Congwen, it all made sense now. Wang Yong cleared his throat, signaling her to behave. Only then did he notice me standing not far away. His mouth fell open. "Kiss, Song Jingyun, can it really be you?" He rubbed his eyes in disbelief. Having been seen, I stepped gracefully out of the tent's shadow. "Master Wang, long time no see." And Ruo behind me lifted the gold-embossed invitation in her hand. It was one Wang Yong had specially prepared for Princess Changqing. At the sight of it, he understood everything. Wang Yong looked dispirited and did not taunt me further. I had not expected that unreliable girl Changqing would come in handy at a critical moment. Over there, ignoring the onlookers, Wang Mini suddenly threw something into Fu Congwen's arms. "Here, this is a gift I made especially for you. I meant to give it to you on your birthday the other day, but some thief stole it. I had to make another. When I find them, they'll pay." She chattered on. I could not hold back a quiet laugh behind my sleeve. So Pei Lingen had resorted to petty theft. That jade pendant had been stolen from her. He had treated it like a treasure all this time. How deeply devoted. 14. The Pei family had always produced hopeless romantics. His own father had abandoned his position as head of the family and run off with an actress, leaving the title to his second uncle. Back then, old Master Pei had favored his concubine and oppressed his wife, even registering the second son born of a concubine as the legitimate heir. Madame Pei had been an expert at picking fault during morning and evening greetings, making concubine-born sons kneel on cold stone slabs, copying family rules in winter. Who would have thought fate would turn the tables once the second uncle took power? His first act was to drive Pei Lingen and his mother into a leaky thatched cottage. Perhaps it was truly heaven's will. Just as Pei Lingen and his mother had begun to climb out of the cottage, they were about to be sent right back. Still, to make sure the Pei family never rose again, I would need to strike harder. "Then let us deliver one final blow. I will be the sharpest blade in your hand." Fu Congwen had come up behind me at some point, his voice low and firm. After a long silence, I asked the question weighing on my heart. "Did you come back too?" He did not speak, but his expression gave me my answer. 15. Snow fell for the first time in the 33rd year of Yuanzhao. The Pei family was completely destroyed. The Ministry of Justice found evidence of treason in the Pei residence, along with numerous charges of bribery and corruption. Pei Lingen's second uncle had held the position of family head for so long that he was not without means, Fu Congwen, and I had put a great deal of effort into bringing him down. The clink of chains dragging across the ground was gradually swallowed by the snow. Pei Lingen huddled in the darkest, dampest corner of the cell, his thin prison clothes hanging off his bony shoulders. He was fighting two ragged prisoners over half a moldy steamed bun. He did not stop when he saw me. He stuffed the bun into his mouth quickly before lifting his head. I waved my hands before his eyes. His right eye was clouded over, while his left blazed with terrifying fury. "What are you here for? To laugh at me, you wicked woman, you framed a loyal official. Just because I did not love you, you took such vicious revenge." He stumbled toward me. "Miss, be careful." A guard's blade flashed before me, the smell of rust and blood thick in the air. Pei Lingen was pulled back by the chains, falling to the ground sobbing like a trapped beast. "You are utterly ridiculous." Memories of my past life tangled together, and I actually laughed until tears streamed down my face, blurring my vision. "Everything you suffer today, you deserve." I ignored his raving and walked slowly to another cell, stopping before it. When Mother Pei saw me, her face lit up. Her blood-stained fingers clutched the bars, pounding them repeatedly. Jingyun, Jingyun." When I did not respond, she cried, "Miss Song, you used to love Lingen. If you beg the Crown Prince for mercy, I will let Lingen marry you at once." I burst out laughing. Even in this state, she still spoke of Pei Lingen as if he were something precious. I handed the guards several gold ingots and ordered them to take good care of my former mother-in-law and husband. Then I turned and left, ignoring the screams and curses behind me. Outside the prison, a Fu family carriage waited. Fu Congwen stood on the stone steps, his deep red silk robe making his features even more handsome. He took off his cloak and draped it over my shoulders. "Guyun Pavilion in the south just got new Lushan cloud tea. Might I invite the fair lady to taste it?" I reached out and caught a snowflake, watching it melt in my palm. Everything felt finally settled. Smiling, I turned to him. "Then I shall think about it." 16. Afternoon sunlight slanted into Chunxiang Pavilion. Changqing leaned over her desk, reading a storybook. Now that the Pei family, my old thorn, was gone, I felt much lighter. "Changqing, do you plan to play with these pots and jars forever?" I picked up a bottle of perfume from the table and sniffed it. Changqing glanced at me calmly, her voice flat. "Careful, it's poisonous." I jumped, immediately dropping the bottle and standing to wash my hands. A mischievous smile tugged at her lips. I realized I had been tricked. "Very funny. You lied to me." I raised my hand to playfully hit her, but she dodged sideways. "You think too little of me. My ambitions lie far beyond these pots and jars." I cut her off first. "I know. Her Highness Princess Changqing's great ambition is to open 30 jade shops in Longxi, set up 50 weapon workshops in Yuju, then hire a few managers to watch over them, and travel the world in her own carriage. Am I right, Your Highness?" Changqing was used to my ways. She did not grow annoyed, only shook her head helplessly. "When I am surrounded by children and grandchildren, you will still be alone. Will you truly not regret it?" After a long pause, I asked her seriously. To the drip of the water clock, she gently filled the incense burner with her newly made perfume. Blue smoke curled upward, blurring her brows. "However sweet a thrush in a golden cage may sing, it can never be as free as a swallow under the eaves. If this world will not let women spread their wings, I will carve out my own world." In both my past life and this one, Changqing was always the person I admired most, but in this age, to actually do such a thing was no easy task. Even she had faced countless obstacles to get where she was. The bitterness of it was known only to her. "Whatever you choose, I will always stand by you." I knew these hands that measured incense and herbs would one day lift the heavy curtains that this world had laid upon women. 17. In the spring of the 35th year of Yuanzhao, my cousin the Crown Prince ascended the throne. My parents returned from the south. When they heard what had happened to the Pei family, their expressions held quiet relief that I had come to my senses in time. "Jingyun, your father thinks very well of that young man from the Fu family. Your mother and I traveled far, and we often heard the people praise him." My mother nodded in agreement. I smiled at their united front. Just then, a servant reported, Fu Congwen had arrived again. I looked at the